So, welcome again to episode 8 of Curb Vulture's Reselling Podcast. I have today on the show Pop the Trunk Vintage, and we're going to talk a little bit about how she got the name, some health issues she's been battling that kind of led her out of corporate world into reselling. So, here she is. I'm going to let her tell a little bit about herself. So, tell me your real name, not just your @ sign, and how you came up with that name.
My name is Kayla, and yes, I am Pop the Trunk Vintage. I came up with my name. It's kind of a fun story. Growing up, my mom was a single mom, and she was also an interior designer. So in our home, we had a lot of really beautiful pieces. But when times got kind of tough, we would pick a piece from the house, and my mom would say, "Pop the trunk." And that meant that we were going to load it up and go sell it. And so like if we needed back to school clothes or, stuff for sports, like just a little extra money 1 month, we would load up the car and pop the trunk. So I chose it because it's kind of like, a special memory of my mom and how hard she worked. And it's also like a really fun play on words. So it works for what I'm doing.
Was your childhood kind of like how probably I imagine my children will remember their childhood, like a constant rotation of furniture and things that were decorating your house, especially since she was an interior decorator?
Yes. She was always bringing cool things in the house, a lot of which I still have in my house, which is fun. You never knew what was gonna come and what was gonna go.
And so what was her style? Was it vintage or was it a little bit more, was it different?
I definitely remember thrifting as a kid. Like my mom was into anything that was unique. I wouldn't say everything was vintage. Like there were some like just nice decorator pieces, but she's always had a love for old things. So it was definitely like a mix match hodgepodge of somehow she made it all so beautiful, which is kind of where I think I get my style. It's like, it's not one specific era. It's all of the things that are cool and unique.
I think like eclectic kind of.
Eclectic, yes.
That's probably the word. So tell me a little bit about how you got into this thing. How long have you been doing it? And then how long have you been, how'd you get into it?
Yeah. So I officially started last September. So I used to work, I went to Baylor. And so I used to work in healthcare, sort of. I worked in like executive level leadership. So I had a very stressful job, but one that I really loved. And I spent like the first 10 years after college just kind of focused on climbing the ladder, which for me worked out really well. My husband and I were able to get debt free. We learned a lot. Like I learned a lot as a leader. I developed a lot of skills. But during the pandemic, I actually got very sick, which is kind of what you were alluding to. So that's kind of where things started. I had to leave my job. It was kind of wild because it was like overnight. So I was fine and then was bedridden for about 2 years. So ultimately, we think what it was long COVID turned into like all these nasty neurological disorders. And unfortunately, no one in like the Austin area was able to help me. So there was a doctor in New York, one of the only doctors or surgeons that was treating the disorder that I have, which is called idiopathic intracranial hypertension. But it's basically when pressure, like your spinal fluid builds up in your brain and creates like a pressure system, which is why I was unable to get up because I had to be horizontal, like lying down.
Okay, we got to stop there because I would go absolutely insane if I had to lie
Yes.
horizontally.
Yes.
Tell me, how did you get through that? Just that. I mean, obviously the diagnosis and the pain or the discomfort that you had, but the mental anguish of just not being able to do anything.
Yes, the pain is a whole separate thing, but then yes, the mental side is so real. And, I'm actually a Christian. And so for me, like it was just leaning on the Lord. I played so much worship music in my bedroom. Like anytime I was just feeling overwhelmed or frustrated, like that was my go-to, is just prayer and worship. And that's ultimately what helped me get through that. And my husband, I have an incredible husband, and he just like catered to me like no other, like was the best. So
God love, I know my poor husband, he puts up with so much stuff. And then I put him in front of Instagram reels. I have the one Instagram reel that he's like, I'm a reseller husband.
I love that.
He was so good for that, but he hates social media. He's actually a videographer for the last 25 years, and he hates being in front of the camera. He loves being behind the camera. And so that was like an uncomfortable space, but God love them. They do us so good. But I totally know what you mean. My story is that we had taken a lavish vacation. Well, not lavish. It was a very budget friendly vacation for 9 people to Hawaii, but we had $10,000 of debt. And I mean, I sat in my bed, not because of sickness, just because I was so upset that I had done that to my family, and just prayed like, God, please, like, I got myself in this mess, but you're going to have to get me out of it. And it's, when you are at your lowest, I think that that's, a really amazing place to be able to be like, look, I need help, and I've heard one time that we all have our superpowers, like all species, all animals, everything. You're born with like a special thing that when you are born, like it literally, like giraffes, like immediately get up and start walking. Humans are born with the superpower of crying. It helps our mothers know when we're hungry, when we're tired, when we need to be burped. And so it seems like a weakness, but actually crying out for help is one of our greatest superpowers and strengths. So I love that you were able to kind of call on that during that time. So take me from you're in bed, recovery to vintage.
Yeah, so I was going through that. We're going back and forth from New York. Have no job.
You're actually going to New York during this time.
Right. So
that's during like 2020, during COVID.
Yes. So the only surgeon that treats the disease or disorder, I guess, that I have was in New York. So we would fly back and forth for surgeries, and we would stay there for weeks at a time and then come home.
Draining stuff, or what was surgery for?
Well, so they found that I kind of had one thing that then led to another, and it just all kept. I had a jugular vein decompression surgery. So they opened me up and cut some things in my spine to try to make space for the pressure to relieve. So I didn't do a shunt. Thank goodness. I really didn't want to do that. That led to, I developed some it's called POTS. It's like a dysautonomia. And then I was diagnosed with stage 3 endometriosis during that time. So it was like one thing after another. And so I very much attribute like my health and healing and way to vintage to the medical community and also to divine healing from the Lord, because it was like this slow progression of, one surgery, feeling a little bit better, some prayer, and just believing for full health. And little by little that started to come. And so when I started feeling a little bit better, my husband was like, why don't you just pursue, your dream of being an entrepreneur? I'm like, well, what would that be? Like, how would I do that? He really encouraged me to just go for it. He's like, take $500 and just, go buy the vintage stuff you like and see if you can resell it. I didn't know what I was doing at first. I still kind of look back at the few items that I bought when I first started, and they're just kind of like fun to look at. Like, why did I buy this thing?
Hey, but it made money. That's all that you've got to do.
Exactly. But no, I slowly developed, my unique spin on what I wanted to sell. And I have a love for all things vintage. So I went for it, and now here we are. So
when you started, okay, your husband goes, I want you to be an entrepreneur, which is amazing. First of all, kudos, major green flag there. Why vintage? Like, were you following sellers? Like, what made you, out of all the entrepreneurial endeavors you could go into, what made you choose that one?
Well, so I knew that I didn't want to and couldn't go back to like the grind of a traditional job because of my chronic issues. Like, I needed space for my health and for my creative side, like my creative outlet. And I had never been able to like pursue that before really creatively in my jobs. And so my home is like decked with sentimental vintage. I just have a love for decorating and design.
Mm-hmm. And obviously from your mom. Yeah.
She instilled that in me. So I am a creative spirit. But so I guess in my head, like, I always knew that I wanted it to be in that realm of things. I just didn't know how to make it happen. So it kind of, again, it's like one of those things that, like, it's a gift from the Lord. Pop the Trunk for me is like the Lord's business. Like, how much I make, what things I find, like, it's all him, because when I sit back and think about it, I'm like, yeah, how did I come up with that? Like, how is this even happening?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way. Like, I started just picking up stuff on the side of the road. So it wasn't vintage necessarily. It could have been an IKEA dresser or a dollhouse. And I was just looking it was right before, during the pandemic, right before the pandemic. I was looking at, people on Instagram. I didn't have an Instagram. And when I started out, I was just like posting things I had already sold that were vintage that I happened to find on the side of the road and being like, sold, yay me. Just to show off and, showing off the staging and stuff. For me, it was like one thing led to the other. And, it was a total God thing for me. I have this one story that I love sharing is I remember going into this Goodwill and I really had to go to the bathroom. But as I was driving, to a neighboring city, and I was like, while I was driving, I was like praying. I was like, God, this is your business. And then when I went up to this Goodwill, it says, pray, worry less, pray more. And I was like, yes, amen, amen. And so I'm walking to the Goodwill, have to go to the bathroom. I'm going to the back. The furniture's right next to the bathroom. And I see these two beautiful bentwood rockers, like in mint condition. And this guy's like hovering over with his phone looking at them. And I'm like, oh man, like he's going to get them. Like he's over there on eBay looking at their value and all this stuff. And so I just went to the bathroom, and in the bathroom I prayed. I was like, Lord, if they're mine, they're mine. If it's meant to be, I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to worry. I'm going to pray more. So I prayed. I said, Lord, if they're mine, they're mine. Just if not, bless him. May he make a lot of money, walk out, and he's nowhere to be found. And I'm like, well, that's odd. And now the ticketing system in Austin is the same, where you pull off the bottom half, but this was in a different city. So they had that same ticketing system. So I was like, oh my gosh, the bottom ticket isn't taken. And I asked the guy that's bringing more furniture out, do I just take the ticket, right? And he's like, yeah. And so I take both tickets and I walk up to the thing, kind of that place where you're like, I'm gonna walk up and I'm gonna put a sold sign on. I'm gonna go buy it really fast, even though I still need to look at the rest of the Goodwill. And he walks out of the bathroom and looks at the two rockers and goes, oh shit. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did he not pull the tickets off and take them with him to the bathroom? I don't know, and I of course, there's part of you that's like, oh, well, here, you can have them.
Right.
But I was like, no, I got that. That's mine. And so, and honestly, it worked out because he was going to sell them for way less. He wouldn't have gotten near the profit. And it wasn't even his passion. He was he's like a musician. That's really was his passion. He just kind of flipped for fun. So we started talking, and I kind of gave him some tips because I do social media for 20 years and in graphic and web design and marketing. And so I was able to help him, really think about how he can market his other side of his business. So it worked out just fine. But there was a moment I was like, when God builds something, you don't have to strive for it. So lately, I found myself a little bit strivey and a little bit burnt out because of it. And I've God's been like, nope, got to pull back. Stop chasing the dream. Let the dream chase you. I promise it'll come for you when it's meant to be. It's meant to be. So let's talk about maybe a favorite story that you have in this whole thing that you just like I shared my favorite story. What is your favorite story?
I think something that's been really special to me, throughout this journey so far, has been, I'm from the Midwest originally. So I was born and raised in a small town outside of St. Louis, and that's where my family lives. And I have found a way to incorporate going back and forth from the Midwest and bringing vintage to Austin. I will go and I will source for anywhere from a week to a few weeks and spend time with my family, but also be in a place where vintage is flowing. There's a lot of good vintage in the Midwest, in the small town that I'm from. So I get to go and support local resellers there, but then bring it back to Austin. So I've done that several times. I've got a trip coming up. So that's been really special to me just because it's also involved my family. They now are always scouting for me, and they already have my unit starting to fill up for when I get there.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. So let's talk, because you kind of talked about buying from other resellers. Now I've had resellers, especially when I was starting out, buy from me. And I know that that's kind of can be a controversial thing. I don't mind if resellers buy from me. How do you feel about resellers buying from you? And then also, as you're what is your kind of theory on buying from other resellers too, and how you were talking about how that supports them?
Well, so I've had it happen both ways. I've had another reseller purchase a chair from me and then sell it for a whole lot more than what I sold it to her for, which to me, I think it's great. Like I was excited to sell the chair that I sold her, and I'm sure she was excited when she sold it reupholstered. So I think it's great. We all have different types of clients and people that are following us. And then, the resellers that I'm buying from in my small town, they are very excited when I come to town, and they know what I do and that I'm a reseller, and they're excited to sell to me. So I think that, all of us supporting each other is great, because there's a lot of people out there that want to purchase goods for their home, and we all have different price points.
Yeah, I think, and different clientele, like you said, and some of us are going to recover it. I sold a pair of like Simon chairs, or kind of Milo Bauman style chairs. And, he had already had a buyer. I sold them for 800, and he was going to sell them for like 7,000, but he was going to spend 2,000 or 3,000 recovering them. And, so, I mean, it's like more power to you. Like you paid what I was asking for, and I'll pay what you're asking for. Like, trying to be kind of keep that in mind for sure. So tell me about, like, so you go there, you have all these sourcing things, you like fly there and rent a U-Haul and come back. What does that look like?
We typically will drive there. My husband is a hunter, so we always like tag along with hunting season. So we're there for a few weeks anyway. So he's hunting, I'm hunting, just a different type of hunting. Then we'll rent a U-Haul and bring it back.
I think that's a whole reel there. Like he's this hunter, you're this hunter, two different things. I'm talking about reels. Talk about your reels. Like you've been making reels lately, social media, like kind of talk about that experience. Has that helped your growth? What does that look like for you?
So I'm super transparent. I just say it how it is. And I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to reel making. I just like have fun and do it. I used to be super serious in like the days of working my standard 9 to 5. And now I've just found that I can just be myself and it's fun. So in all honesty, I just make what music sounds fun, what I like, wearing or showing off. So yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it.
The best advice. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. So I love that. But do you sell mostly small items, or do you sell, I know you sell a lot of small items. Do you sell furniture as well?
I do both. Yeah. So I do my smalls, like more home decor, like small home decor pieces that I ship, or local pickup. I do offer shipping on those. And then I also sell the furniture. So a little bit of both. I have a love for both, but so it just depends on what I find, and, what speaks to me is what I sell.
Yeah. Now, do you restore furniture, or you just flip it?
No, I have such an admiration for those who restore. God bless them, but I cannot do that. I keep it original too, and I have no problem if you want to paint it or do whatever, but that is not what I will be doing.
Yeah, I very rarely. I just am like, I'd rather just like, I'll clean it up, I'll do a little restoration, but if I have to do major work, I'm like, no, I'm too old for that. I don't want to do that no more. Okay, so talk about the shipping thing, because I do ship big furniture, but using U-Ship, but I actually have never had to, because my inventory goes so quickly locally that it's not something I've had to do. Talk about the shipping process for your smalls, and kind of demystify that for the listeners, so that somebody that's like, because I mean, I'm like constantly like, oh, shipping, like it like makes me cringe, like, so demystify that. So like it, maybe is it as hard as I'm thinking it is?
I'll say a few things. So, well, one, I'm totally open to shipping my furniture. I have shipped a few pieces. I use like a local company that will wrap it up and ship it, or deliver it rather. So I do that. But like you said, normally things sell pretty quick. So unless you've listed it in a wider market, it's usually going to sell locally. And the same is true for the smalls. So when I list my smalls, I typically list them on Instagram first, then I'll kind of open it up to Facebook, where I will, allow shipping on it. So, Facebook has a really easy option where you can just put the weight in, the estimated weight of the item, and they will calculate the shipping. And then when someone buys it, they'll send you the label. So if you're selling it through Facebook, they have like shipping made easy. I also sell on some online forums, and you have to calculate the shipping yourself, but it's really easy. The biggest saver for me has been, I don't know if you're familiar with Pirate Ship.
Mm-hmm.
But I love Pirate Ship. It really gets the goods to the customer a lot cheaper. So I think that's kind of a draw, if you're buying a $20 to $70 small good and your shipping is less than $15, it makes it, kind of exciting, and you can fill a box of a bunch of goodies and it's not crazy expensive. Yeah, it's a lot of work though. I really love I love my customers who are out of state, but I really love my local customers because I put it in a beautiful basket on the porch and they pick it up.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot easier. I didn't know that about Facebook though. I've always I've seen Facebook be like, "Would you like this couch from Minnesota shipped for $7?" And I'm like, "What is going on there?" And so I've never actually delved into it, but they actually send you a receipt, sorry, a label like on email, or how does Facebook send that to you?
Yeah, they do it. Their shipping fees are more expensive for the customer, but some customers it's easier for them to just check out through Facebook. So that's what they do. And it will email me. Once I approve the purchase, then it will mark it as sold automatically. And then I just put it in the mail. I wrap it up carefully and use the label that they sent me.
And then how much are you reusing old newspapers? I mean, newspapers aren't even a thing anymore. How are you getting your wrapping supplies? Because that's a place where you want to save money too.
Yes, it is so expensive. I think this is what I put on my boxes. Most of my boxes that go out, we use recycled material is what I put. I have some neighbor friends that are just so generous and good to me, and they will keep their bubble wrap that they get from Amazon packages. Sometimes, like last week, I had so many orders, I had to go buy bubble wrap, and I didn't want to, but I did. A lot of it I will ask around and get it from neighbors.
I love that tip. Asking neighbors for their recyclable, bubble wrap from Amazon. I mean, my neighbor, I love neighbors in general, because they will look out for me when they have a piece of furniture, they pass a piece of furniture. I have a neighbor that's now one of my consigners because she finds stuff for me all the time. I just did a video on her. God bless neighbors. They're definitely a good resource. So definitely, yeah, if you're listening and you're wanting to ship, but you don't want to spend all that money, reach out to your local Buy Nothing or Facebook group or neighborhood HOA or whatever it is that you're in to ask, hey man, can I come by? Because those people we're constantly throwing away Amazon boxes and we are like, this sucks. Like so much is going to waste. Like this is a good box. Like they send good boxes. So I love that reuse and reduce, recycle aspect of what you're doing. If you are looking at somebody who is starting out and you want to give them a piece of advice, a word of wisdom on getting into the vintage furniture reselling or even just reselling whatever game, what would be your top tip?
Well, I've actually had a few people message me and ask me this, folks that are just getting started. And I always say the same thing. So I'll say it here. If you're a reseller and you want to get started, buy the things that you love, buy the things that you would put in your own home. That is kind of my rule, which is also challenging because a lot of things end up staying in my home. If you buy the things you love, you're going to be motivated to photograph it. You're going to be motivated to list it. You're going to enjoy the whole process because you love the item. And then other people are going to be drawn to it because you love it. You'll find the people that are interested in the things that you're interested in, and you'll find your customers.
Yeah, I think that same spirit that you love something and you put, it comes off in a photograph or in the way that you talk about an item. And then worst case scenario, it stays in your house and you love it anyway. I want to ask you this wonderful question that I think is good because it helps people that are listening know that you're doing well in this area, but you're not perfect. You don't have it all together. You need help in this area. So what is one place that you feel very expansive? Like I'm killing it in this particular area. And an area that you're like, man, I really wish I had somebody kind of school me in this area. I need support in this area.
Being an entrepreneur and working on your, you have to do everything on your own. It's very rewarding and very empowering. So I love that aspect. I feel like my leadership skills, just really have helped me know how to do all of the things on my own. So I feel really good about being able to steward and run my own business. There are two areas that I, think that I could kind of focus on, and one of which is, it may sound silly, but it's my strength. So I am when you're moving this furniture and you're constantly rearranging and cleaning and, it is very physically demanding, more than people probably realize. When you're picking stuff up, you're by yourself. When you're delivering, you're by yourself. So I am working on trying to get strong like physically. So that's an area of growth that may sound kind of silly, but for me is really important because it's like kind of core. And if you want to do this for a long time, you have to be strong. So I'm working on getting strong.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that that's probably not talked about enough when you are getting into this business. Like you're lifting up mid-century sleeper sofas that weigh a ton, and you have to be handling that, somehow. And, a lot of, I think, women that start this, you do everything yourself and you don't ask for help, and you're like kind of shifting and shimmying it out. And then all of a sudden, and I think recently you posted that you had thrown your back out. I had thrown my back out. And then like you said, it's a one woman show.
Yep.
If I'm out of commission, my business is down for the count. So
Yep.
I absolutely, so talk about maybe how you threw your back out recently.
Oh, well, simple. I was delivering furniture into Austin. I usually pick like one day a week where I do deliveries into like outside of Leander because that's where my home is. And so that's where my pickups typically are. But I do offer delivery to the surrounding area. And Austin was where I was headed. And I was lifting furniture in and out of the truck. And I don't even know what I did. But then by the end of the day, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't move. So yeah, I couldn't do much for 3 days. Luckily, I was fine, and it wasn't anything more serious, but it doesn't take a whole lot to mess yourself up. So all I could sell was smalls for the remainder of the week because I could not move things into my staging area or clean stuff.
My chiropractor said one of the worst things you can do is when you're bending down, going to the side, like pivoting and picking it up that way. She says that and that's what happened to me. I can lift big furniture, picked up, like, I think I was like finding a bra that I had like was on my floor, and I picked it, but I turned when I picked it up. Like it wasn't even heavy, but it was something about the motion of like, going down, but then turning your waist and lifting up. And she was like, you've got to come in finally. So now we've worked out a deal where I'm able to come in. But I am the same way. Like I, at some point was like, my core is so weak that I have to do something. So I started doing Hot Works, which I absolutely love. They're actually one of my sponsors for my Mrs. Texas run. And I can tell you, like, now that my obliques, like I have like, you can see them. I'm like,
can I ask you what you do at Hot Works? Because I always see that you're in there and I'm like, what is she doing in there?
So good. So it's like, it's got 8 boxes. So four on one side and 4 on the other. The 4 on one side have like 2 spin cycle, they have 3 spin cycles in 2 of the boxes. And then they have a row in the one of the boxes. And then like this, like kind of like an elliptical, but it's like a bike elliptical. And so that's like your HIIT training. You do 15 minutes. It gets up to, you can put your degrees up to 130. So it's like detoxifying, it's HIIT training. It's got red light therapy. So it's like, all these things. And on the other side, they rotate a bunch of classes and it's all video. So it's 24 hours a day. You don't have to, you make appointments on the app. And then on the other side, it is a lot of isometrics, yoga, Pilates, a lot of slower exercise. They do have a buns and they have a core exercise. And then the very back, they have like regular free weights and stuff like that. No cardio outside, but it's so great because I was doing this really expensive yoga studio that was really challenging. But as a Christian, like I, try to be careful with like when they start doing like chanting and stuff, that's like something that I want to do. So they kind of started doing that. And I was like, I'm not really into this. But I love the practice of yoga and all these moves and the strength that I had. And so when this came up, I was like, yes. And it kind of has that same like Zen, like whatever the vibe is, like it's just calm. And I have 7 kids. So like, it's just a place where I can like sit and like just get away for a little bit and do what I need to do. And then sometimes I'll just sit there for a little longer and stay warm. And it's great during the winter because it's so cold outside and you go into this warm, hot box. And then you come out like dripping with sweat. So I highly recommend Hot Works for anybody, especially if you're older, because it's slower. It's not like this constant cardio on the treadmill. Like my knees aren't what they used to be. So I love it for that. So absolutely you should check it. You should come with me. Since you're close by, you should come with me and check it out.
I might have to try.
Get you a free thing. I think there's like, there's always specials that they're doing. So definitely check it out. So, all right. So tell the audience, where can we find you? Where can we shop your inventory?
So the best place to shop my inventory is Instagram, which is Pop the Trunk Vintage. Pretty much every social is going to be Pop the Trunk Vintage. So it makes it easy to find me. Recently on TikTok, again, don't know what I'm doing. And YouTube is Pop the Trunk Vintage. So that is where you can shop if you're interested in my vintage goods.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on my podcast. And I hope that the listeners have gleaned some wisdom that will inspire them to go out and start flipping furniture, make a little side hustle. It's one of the easiest ways to make cash on the side if you're a single mom or you're a mom that's just looking to do something a little bit different and out there. So definitely recommend doing that. Remember that I also have a $7 starting reseller course available. It is an hour-long masterclass. It is full of my story, information, just all the little things to get you started so that you don't have to waste time making the mistakes that I did. And then I also have some other courses after that if you really want to get into like Shopify and sales tax and all the things that I have to do on a regular basis there. So thank you so much for joining us, and join us next time, and I'll see you then.